Sean with Toolmonger.com, and jigsaws are a fast, easy way to cut curves in wood. Today I'm going to show you how to do that. When selecting a jigsaw, there's only a few features you need to be aware of. The first is orbital motion, and I'm going to show you how that works. Some saws have a switch which adjusts the orbital motion, which is just an elliptical motion that the blade makes. The deeper the ellipse, the faster it goes, and the flatter the ellipse, the slower it goes and the less aggressive the cut. Some saws actually also have a dust blower dust collection system on the bottom. These are sometimes powered, sometimes not. You can hook hoses up to the back of them, or sometimes it's a self-contained bag or unit depending on what model you get. This particular one has something you can turn on and off and fit a fitting into the back here for a hose. Some don't. It's personal preference whether you want to or not. Other features are lasers and lights. A lot of saws have lasers and lights on them now. There's a big camp either way on whether they're actually useful or not, but this particular saw has both. There's a laser that shoots out straight. Now if you're cutting curves, the laser is absolutely positively useless. However, there's also lighting functions like an LED light. This one has both and can be turned off or on, whatever you want to do. Okay, the next thing we have is blade type, and there are many different types used for different things. We have anything from a fast cut wood blade to a metal cutting blade or a scroll blade, and they're basically identified by how many teeth they have and what position the teeth are in. A fast cut wood blade, like this one here, is, you can see the teeth are very large. They'll do a very aggressive cut, and they'll get wood out of the way very quickly and maybe not so accurately. Something like this is a smaller, you see the teeth are smaller and they're more in number. This one happens to be a multi-purpose blade for wood or something like that. Not so good for metal, because metal actually requires very small teeth, but very good for basic cutting, turns that are reasonably small in diameter, and it'll also do straight cutting. Now, not as fast as something like the last blade, but they will get through it. There are also scrolling blades which are very thin and the teeth are very wide, so it cuts a wide swath in front of it, or metal blades, which I mentioned before, small, very small teeth, many of them, so it cuts very slowly but very accurately. Pick which one's best for your material and what you're doing with it. Next thing we go over is safety. Now, this is not like some other saws you see. Once you pull the trigger on this, it takes a while to stop. If your fingers are in there while it's stopping, if there's something underneath the blade, if there's anything in this area while the saw is on, whether you let go of the trigger or not, it's going to be cut. So keep your fingers and anything else you don't want cut out of that area. Another thing, and another good safety tip, is unplug it before you replace the blade. Real simple, because you put your fingers right where the blade is to remove the blade. Make sure it isn't powered when it's doing that. The next thing is load up and make sure everything is clamped down and you're not sawing your bench top in half. Other than that, you're ready to go. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is put the blade back in, plug it in and do some cutting. This time we selected a fast cut wood blade because we are using 3/4 inch plywood, and we don't really care about how it looks. So let's just do that. Once we're ready to go, you can adjust your shoe to whatever position you need to do for cutting. In this case, it's going to be flat on the board, so not a problem. You can also adjust it to beveled angles if your saw supports that. Some do, some don't. Okay, so now it's time to do some actual cutting. The first thing we're going to do is cut in a straight line. And what we do is make sure the shoe is flat against the piece of wood. This will cut down on vibration and actually give you a good control surface on the saw. What you want to be sure and do is start the blade just before you get to the wood. Once you get to once the saw is spun up and powered up and at full speed, or the speed that you're going to be cutting at, then start to progress and pull the saw through the wood. Make sure that you don't push too hard, because the saw will tell you when it can't do anything or it's being pushed too hard or anything like that. You'll notice the blade will either cavitate, start making noise, or flat snap on you, and push all the way through, letting the saw do the work through the center of the wood. come out the other side. Keep your finger on the trigger until the wood is either split completely and you're sure it's split or falls away. Pretty simple with the straight cutting. The only thing you got to do with curve cutting is understand where your blade is, how big it is, and how fast and tight you can turn. The saw, if it is a multi-switch or multi-orbital saw, will actually have a switch that will flatten out the ellipse and allow you to cut a little bit different or a little bit tighter than you would on something like the fast ripping through plywood method that we were just doing. The saw will give you feedback when it is turning too tightly. What will happen is it'll jump up and down and cause problems for you, and I'm going to show you that. Okay, so that was bad. That's the saw giving you feedback, telling you that it can't handle that kind of curve. Now it will bounce up and down like that kind of subtly if you're doing it in a regular type of curve, but if you're wanting to go a little bit tighter, what you do is you wind up going to something like a scroll blade. So we're going to flip it into scroll mode, and what that does is releases this control knob here, which lets you turn the direction of the blade whichever way you need to go. Next, we're going to unplug it and install the blade. Now, the scroll blade works a little bit different than a fast cut blade. It's very thin. It's also, the teeth stick out on either side to cut a big nice curve in the middle of, so it can actually turn pretty easy. The thin part of the blade and the wide teeth, the wide very small teeth, wind up cutting a pretty big swath for its size, and you can actually turn very tightly with it. So what we're going to do is we're going to load up that blade and get a little bit of curve action going. So use the scroll bit. It's pretty simple. It's very similar to before, but this knob now turns, which alters the direction of the blade. Now, a lot of people will just start twisting this thing all around, but the best way to start off with is to drive it like a fire truck. Those old kind of fire trucks that used to have a guy in the front and a guy in the back. Now, the blade will actually turn one way, or you'll be going in a direction, and you need to trail it with the saw so you're never out too far, and you can continue to push and drive through the wood. Obviously, there are other ways to get this done, more expensive scroll saw or a band saw, but this is for $20 to $70 is a cheap and effective way to do it. And I'm not